Hey guys, today we are going to be cooking an all-time household favorite pot roast with carrots and potatoes, and on the side we will have some seasoned rice. Okay, I've already washed the roast that we're using, and we are using the Boston butt roast. Okay, the Boston butt pot roast. Okay, gonna turn the camera a little bit, guys, so sorry, give you a better view. Okay, so I've already washed my roast and seasoned it with a combination of spices. I'm going to show you those spices now. Okay, so we are using the Spice Supreme Creole seasoning. You can use any brand. That's just the brand I use, so the brand doesn't matter. But we're using Creole seasoning, and that's my salt substitute. And we're using the crushed rosemary. We're also using a little Italian seasoning. We're going to use some parsley, and the parsley flakes. We're using the ground black pepper. Alright, we're using some onion powder, which is another salt substitute. Okay, and we're going to be using some minced garlic. And I have not put the minced garlic on here. I'm going to sprinkle that in the pot once I begin to make the gravy. And if you can see there, they're like little chips of diced chips of garlic, fried garlic. So we'll sprinkle that in the pot. But I actually did start sprinkling a couple, and I decided, as you can see, those little brown beige spots, those are a few pieces of garlic that I put on there. And I stopped because it but I will sprinkle more on there once we put it in the pan to fry. Okay, and we are going to be pan searing this roast in a little grease, not a whole lot of grease, because we're not deep frying, we're only pan searing. And we are going to lightly flour our roast. The flour is optional, but it just helps to coat the meat and gives it a nice brown color. And we're going to pan sear the roast on both sides, but you can pan sear it, like I said, without the flour. The flour is optional. It's totally up to you. You may want to try both ways to see which you prefer. And the pan searing just helps to seal in the natural flavors of the meat. It seals in the juices. Okay. And with this pot roast, we're going to be cooking some baby carrots. And we're just going to put that in the pot with the roast and let it cook. And we're going to saute some onions. After we pan sear the roast, I'm going to take it out of the pan. And then I will saute a few onions in that same grease that I'm using. Okay, and then I'm going to add some flour to that to make a gravy. Let that flour brown over in the onions, and then I'm going to slowly add some water to form the gravy for the roast. And then we will put the roast back in the pot and let it cook for about probably 2.5 hours to make sure it's completely done throughout. It's nice and tender, and we're going to let it cook till it get really tender, and the meat becomes kind of loosened where it's almost falling apart. Okay, and I've already washed my white potatoes and cut them into small pieces, and we will be adding that to the pot with the carrots and the roast. Okay, and then on the side I will be cooking some rice. So I've already measured my rice, and we have 1 cup of rice that we will be cooking. And I've already measured my water here, and we have 2.5 cups of water. I'm going to put that in a pot and let that water come to a complete boil, and then we will turn the temperature down and add the rice, and we will be seasoning our rice with some parsley flakes and a dash or two of the Creole seasoning. And you can also add a few onions and bell pepper to your rice if you would like to give it an added flavor. But because I'm using so many onions already in the pot roast, I'm not going to add them to my rice today. I'm just going to use the parsley flakes and the Creole seasoning in the rice. Okay, and we already have our flour here that we're going to coat the roast with, and I have my pot on the stove with the grease already heating up. So now I'm going to just put on my gloves so that I can coat the roast. Okay guys, I've already started coating the roast, and we're just going to lightly flour each side of the roast. Like I said, this step is optional, and you're not going to put a whole lot of flour on it. Okay, and you see I'm just lightly rubbing it across the roast. So you don't want to put too much, you just want enough to coat it. Now we're going to turn it on this side and do the same thing. You can just lightly sprinkle . Okay, now we have that brown. Now we're going to take this over and put it in our pan. Okay, and as you can see here, our roast is browning. I just put enough grease. I don't know if you can really see all the way down, but it's just enough grease in there to coat the bottom of the pan. You don't want to have a whole lot of grease in here, because again, like I said, you're not deep frying the roast. You're just giving it a quick sear on every side. So you gonna give it a minute or two to brown on this bottom side. Maybe pan sear, maybe about 2 to 3 minutes, depending on your stove heating temperature. But I've been letting this heat up for a minute so you can hear the sizzling of it. And then we will turn it to the next side and keep rotating until all 4 sides are lightly brown, and then we will remove it from the pot and make our gravy. Okay guys, now we're going to turn it and let it brown on the other side. Okay, and as you can see here, how that brownness is coming on the roast. Okay, you see there how it browned. See those seasonings that is on top of that. Rosemary, the parsley. And so we're just going to let it continue to brown on the other side. And like I say, it only takes, if your grease is hot, it only takes about 2 to 3 minutes for it to brown on each side. So we're going to let this brown for another minute or so on that side, and then we will flip it again. And we're going to go ahead and start on our rice. Like I said, we have 2 1/2 cups of warm water that we're adding to our pot now. We're just going to pour that in and let it come to a boil. Okay. And we're going to put our lid on it, let it boil. And we're going to add our seasonings. Okay, we're adding just a little Creole seasoning. You don't want too much. We don't want it to be too red. You're just adding a little for the flavor. Okay, and we're going to add a little parsley. And this is optional. I just like seasoned rice. And like I said earlier, it's really is delicious with the onions and bell pepper inside the rice as well. But I'm not putting onions and bell pepper in it today because I'm going to have so much flavor in the roast and gravy. So I don't need all of that in the rice. And we're just waiting on the rice to come to a boil. Right now we are just flipping it again. We have turned it on the side, and you can see how it is browning on the side. And it smells amazing, everybody. Oh my God, the aroma is awesome. And it's not even doing, it's just pan searing. But you can see how it's brown on each side. So we're just going to let it brown on that bottom side. Then we're going to flip it and do this side, the top part right here. This looks brown, but it's not. It just has a little brownish coloration to it from where the other sides were down in the grease and some got on that. But we're going to completely let it brown. Right. And we'll be back and show you the gravy making process when we saute our onions and add our flour. Then we will add water to make the gravy. And we're also going to add some additional seasonings to the gravy. Some of those seasoning that we use on the roast, we will be adding in our gravy. Alright guys, there you have it. Our roast is completely pan seared. You can see that. See the sides of it. Okay, and now we're going to add our onions. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Just giving it a light stir so that the grease can get on the onions. Make sure they separate. Alright, and I had like the large onion, and I use half of it. I slice half of that large onion. And you don't have to use this many onions. I'm just an onion lover, so I have plenty of onions for my gravy. So I want it to be literally onion gravy. Alright, we're just going to let that brown for maybe a minute or two. Let that saute in that seasoned grease. As you can see, all of the drippings from the roast is still in there. And we're just going to let that saute. Then we're going to add a little flour and let the flour brown. And once the flour brown, we will add the water to make our gravy. And we're going to put enough water in there, to cover the top of the roast. And we're going to put our carrots and potatoes in there. Okay, guys, be back in a minute. Alright, the onions have sauteed. Now we're going to push them kind of to the side. And you can also, a variation will also be for bell peppers. You can do onions and bell peppers. Or if you don't like onions or you're allergic to onions, you could just saute the bell pepper, or even celery. You can use the seasoned blend, which is a combination of bell pepper, onion, and celery. It's totally optional. So you see here, I'm just sprinkling on the flour, and the flour will just help thicken up the gravy. And we're gonna let that brown. This is a half a cup, but of course I used some of the flour that was in here to coat the roast, so you don't have to use a whole half a cup of flour for your gravy. Okay, I used it, and we're just gonna blend that in really well in that grease. Just mix it around till it dissolves in the grease. Okay guys, the flour has browned, so I didn't use all of that flour, so you probably need maybe about 1/4 of a cup of flour total to coat your roast and for your onion gravy. Okay, you can see that bubbling there, and I'm just going to slowly add some water and let it mix in there. And then we will add some more water to it. And you see that flour was in there. And you can do the option I'm doing. Add it slowly, or you can pour it all in at one time. It's totally up to you. I have done it both ways, and pretty much turns out the same way. It just depends on whether or not you're in a big hurry. And like I said, I'm going to add a little more of the seasoning that I used on the roast in here. Not a whole lot, just a little. But that is optional. Just according to your taste. Alright, we're going to add a little bit more water. And then we will add our meat back to the pot and add our vegetables. Okay guys, you see the rice is finished. And you can see the seasoned rice. And again, for the rice, I use some parsley and Creole seasoning to season it. Right, and it smells delicious, and I'm quite sure it's going to taste even better. Right, and our roast is sitting here resting, ready to go in this pot. We're just going to let this gravy come to a boil, and then we will add the roast and the vegetables. Okay, you can see I added the additional seasoning like I said, and I just added some black pepper, Creole seasoning, Italian seasoning, and some parsley to the gravy. And of course, you know the onions were already in here sauteed. So we're just going to let this come to a boil. Then we will add our meat, the carrots, and the potatoes. Okay guys, our roast is back in the seasoned gravy, and we are now adding our potatoes, and the water comes just to the top of the roast. Now we're going to add some potatoes in. And we're going to add some carrots. A little pot of hot water. You have to be careful dumping them in there. And I didn't use the whole bag of carrots. I just used half the bag. Okay, so that's in there. We're going to put the lid back on there, but we're not going to close it up all the way. Alright, and that's that done, and we have it. The temperature is like a medium. I'm just going to let that boil for the next 2 to 2.5 hours. Okay guys, we're almost done. Let's see. The potatoes are done, the carrots. So we're getting ready to wrap this up. You can see how it's good and tender, how it's coming apart. That's how we want it. It would be easy. See how that just comes apart with the tongs. See, it's good and tender. I'm not even using a knife. I'm just separating it with the tongs. How you want it to be good and tender. I'm just going to try to take a piece out so that you guys can see it. See how good and tender that is. I didn't even use a knife. I used the tongs. See, it's good and tender. But I am going to let it cook for a few minutes, guys. Thank you for watching. It's good and tender. All those. You see those delicious carrots and potatoes, and they're getting seasoned really, really well. You can see how that gravy has sticking up, and it smells delicious. Alright guys, we are finished. It's still bubbling, but we are finished. You can see the carrots and potatoes, and I have taken the meat and sliced it up, and so it's ready to eat. It's already tender, sliced up, and it's still hot. So it was just simmer a few more minutes until it cools down. But you can see all of that goodness. Loaded with flavor, loaded with seasonings, carrots, potatoes, onions. And now I'm going to let you see a plate that I have fixed. Okay guys, and there's our plate with our roast, our seasoned rice, our potatoes, and our carrots. And it looks delicious. My goodness, smells delicious. Simply delightful. And I may cook some cornbread to go with this. I'm not a big cornbread eater. I like cornbread with certain things, but it would go good with this. So I probably will cook a few pieces of whole cake on top of the stove to go with this. But it looks delicious, doesn't it, guys? I wish you could taste it. Wish you could smell it. Simply delightful. But again, guys, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Cooking with KLun Divine. And this again is our homemade pot roast with seasoned rice, carrots, and potatoes. It was cooked on top of the stove. And please like this video, leave me a comment, and also you can leave me a comment on what you would like for me to cook and share with you guys. Again, thank you for watching. I appreciate your support. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, KLun Divine Inspirations.